out of 1 for yeah, the quarterback that I have, but the big thing that I've been able like and my offense I'm developing. Toronto. I was that fucking no.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Bring that beat. Dude, that beat. Yep. Oh, so tired. Well, I wake up. Then I get it's like, oh hey, Joshua played him. First fight, no fight. Fucking 30%. So it's like, alright, there's only like 4 fights for Joshua. Fuck, it's only all go. Right? All white guy. And I don't honor type thing. What's it look like? I'm someone who doesn't think it's like well, as I am. I would never do. Like if I still had hair, right now I'd probably be rocking hockey. Because before I cut my hair, my shit. sexy. Great. Funny. But yeah,
How's it going, everybody? It is Brendan Donald here with Sterling, and we are here live for some more football talk here on the YouTubes. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right. Nice day out, a little cloudier, so not as hot as it has been for the last, 10 days or so. So that's been nice. Excited for some more football. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It has been nice and hot, and yeah. So it's been. I think I'm getting a little bit of background noise from myself, so I need to fix that.
Could that be me typing, maybe?
Maybe. But yeah, for whatever reason, I'm gonna let you take over here for a sec while I just fix, for whatever reason, why I'm getting some background or
Fair
burping
enough.
from myself.
So, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot going on this week. Preseason week 1, pretty uneventful for the most part. We both got to see our teams in action, Bears and the Steelers, which was good. I know you were saying you had some concerns here and there, but you were overall happy with your team. I know for myself, I was ecstatic with, my quarterback room. That was great stat lines for all 3 guys. I unfortunately missed the first half of my game because my internet went out, which sucked, but I got to see Kenny Pickett in the second half, which was fun. He made some smart plays, broke the pocket a few times, kept those plays alive, and didn't make too many poor decisions other than, getting tackled pretty badly once for a sack. Other than that, really, the only big news that we saw this week was Deshaun Watson. We got some more information from the NFL about what's going on with that suspension. So we'll get into that a little bit here once Brennan gets our sound issues fixed up.
I think I got it. Yeah,
I think I got it.
For whatever reason, I think it was whatever reason, my camera was delayed and it was looping back. Who knows? Maybe we got it.
I need
Okay.
But I need to listen to it back again. But yeah, no, it is definitely a lot of good preseason stuff to talk about. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a listen here and again talk about your Steelers here.
Yeah, so I mean that Pittsburgh game, we got to see a lot of the backups. We didn't see any of the real starters that we're gonna have for the season, like Najee Harris and Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, even Pat Freiermuth wasn't really in. But got some good running games out of Master Teague. Unfortunately, he appears to have injured himself this week, so he's not going to be playing this weekend, which leaves it open to give some of the other running backs an opportunity tonight to see who's going to make a jump and try and be that number 2 guy behind Najee Harris, who obviously is going to get the bulk of the play calls this year at running back for Pittsburgh. From what I was hearing out of Mike Tomlin, he is moving Kenny Pickett up the depth chart this week, so we can see him a little bit more against the second stringers, a little bit more varsity action as opposed to having him just play against the bench guys. So that'll be interesting. They're going to start out the game with Mitch Trubisky again, and then they're going to go to Kenny Pickett before letting Mason Rudolph close out the game this week.
Yeah, that is definitely something that you like to hear.
Yes.
Obviously you want to see Kenny Pickett, 20th overall pick in this year's draft, the future at your guys' quarterback position. And you know what? The dude actually looked fairly good. I know from what we were hearing throughout a lot of training camp is that, we weren't hearing a lot of really good news from him. Obviously, it sounded like there were people already saying that he was looking like a bust, but he looked good when the lights were on. So
He did. It's really tough to say a guy's a bust when we're still in training camp. A lot of that feels like it was just them making news. We weren't seeing a lot of Kenny Pickett in training camp, and there was a reason behind that because the Steelers signed Mitchell Trubisky with the intent of having him as our bridge quarterback, as our starting quarterback.
yeah,
and so like just because we drafted Kenny Pickett at 20, Mitch knew that he was going to have to fight for that job still, but it was his first.
yes,
And so he was going to be given every opportunity, and that's what we've been seeing. They keep giving Trubisky those opportunities to be that starter and show that he deserves to be in Pittsburgh running this team for the next 1 to 5 years, however long it ends up being.
Yep.
We talked at the draft that I didn't really want to see Kenny Pickett as our starter right away this year. I prefer having a guy, unless he goes first overall, or in the top 3 even. I don't like seeing the quarterback hit the field right away, because that college game isn't nearly as fast and as hard hitting as the NFL. And so I like to see those quarterbacks get some time on the sidelines and really bring themselves up to the speed of the NFL game before they get thrown out there and thrown to the wolves.
True. And you and I have always differed on this opinion, without a doubt. Like I say,
Yeah.
if you draft a quarterback in the first round, I don't care if it's pick 1 or pick 32. You're drafting that guy to be your franchise quarterback, and a lot of times we'll see coaches say, "Hey, we're going to, sit this guy and let him develop." But to me, I always look at it going, the best way to develop is to get out there and to do it. Because people always talk about in the NFL of that second year jump after they play, of how the game slows down. And for a quarterback, the game the game is so much faster for a quarterback.
Yeah.
That I feel like that first year of really consistent play is good. And obviously you look at Patrick Mahomes, who sat for an entire year, and you're like, well, that dude sat for an entire year and look at what he is now. But
Not just Patrick Mahomes. You look at some of the greats: Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger didn't start right away. Who else? Who else am I forgetting here? There's somebody else. Aaron Rodgers, right? Some of these great guys. It's good to get them in there and get them up to speed. But if that first season is a complete bust and they just get their asses handed to them because they weren't ready for the game, then all that does is crush their confidence. I mean, look what happened with guys like Mitch Trubisky.
Well, in his
You
rookie
know,
year, he didn't start the first 4 games, and then he finished out the season. And then his next year, he had his best statistical year. He brought the Bears to the playoffs.
Yep.
They were a 12-4 team. Obviously, that was on the backs of an elite level defense. But
and
I
I
do
think
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, that's my only point, and that's really one of the reasons I'm such a fan of the Steelers is that's their team building philosophy. It's build through the draft. It's
yep,
not, oh, draft your day one starter. It's like, no, we're drafting you. We're bringing you into this team. Can you be the guy? You know, we're not just going to hand you those reins, whether we drafted you number 1 overall or whether you're Mr. Irrelevant in the draft.
yeah.
You know, you're going to get an equal opportunity to make this team and prove that you are Steeler tough and that you should be playing in Pittsburgh.
Yep, no, for sure. When it comes to Pickett, like from the action that I saw, again, he looked cool, calm, and collected. It didn't look like it was too bright. Again, he was playing against threes in the fourth quarter
Mm-hmm.
against a team that their threes, like those guys aren't going to be really starters or players anywhere in the league to begin with.
Right.
So
And it's a team that really isn't going to be good anyway.
yeah, it's just one of those things where you look at the Seattle Seahawks, and again, we'll talk about them here in a little bit later. But again, you got to take those early games with a little bit of a grain of salt just because it's again like I look back to last year with Justin Fields when he played in his first preseason game. You know, LeBron James was tweeting out like Justin Fields is amazing, blah blah blah, and he was up against the twos as opposed to the threes with Kenny Pickett. And you're sitting back going like, oh, Justin Fields is gonna win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's clearly the steal of the draft when it comes to the quarterback situation. And then you kind of got to sit back and go, all right, hold on. The dude was
Yeah,
playing against the twos, you know, and we're not seeing like true stuff, so it's hard to kind of evaluate, but it's exciting
it
to
is.
see. It's exciting to see. He,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and
plus,
that's exactly why, like, even with the stat lines he had last week, I'm not coming out here going, oh, yeah, Kenny Pickett's our guy. It's like, no, Mitch Trubisky is still our number 1 quarterback right now because he played well, like, completed his first pass to George Pickens. He didn't turn the ball over, had a touchdown. You know, all 3 of our quarterbacks did really well in that first week preseason, which really makes Mike Tomlin's job that much harder because, you know, if one of them had looked absolutely horrible, then you can go, okay, at least now I know it's a 2-man race, you know, but
yeah,
we're still in a
yeah,
3-man race here. And I think that's great for Pittsburgh. They thrive on competition. And I still think Mitch Trubisky is going to be the guy going into week 1. And if he can't do it, then at least we know that Mason Rudolph appears to be ready to step in if they keep him on the roster. And Kenny Pickett appears to at least have the composure to possibly be out there against the number 1s. And God knows the fan base wants him out there. Like that arena was just going nuts at
oh,
Acrisure
as they
Stadium.
should.
It's so weird not calling it Heinz Field for the first time in like 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always weird to have those weird stadium changes.
All
Like
right.
I still look at Calgary's hockey stadium and still call it the, you know, Saddle Dome or the what actually I don't remember what it was called before.
Roundup
So
Center.
yeah,
No.
Ram Ranch essentially. But I know what you mean with that. It's weird to not call it Heinz Stadium, and it was weird
Yeah.
because it just kind of came out of the blue, where it's just like, oh yeah, we are no longer or we're no longer Heinz Stadium, where
Yeah.
whatever they're calling it now,
Yeah. Acrisure.
Acrisure.
Yeah.
But the guy that I want to talk about, obviously, is George Pickens,
Yeah.
because the biggest thing, obviously, I said this many times leading up to the draft. I said this even after he got drafted. I said George Pickens easily could be the number 1 receiver in this year's class, just because he has number 1 wide receiver written all over him. But he has some off-field issues. He has some maturity concerns. Those are some red flags. So,
Mm-hmm.
and plus he's coming off of an injury from Georgia in his last year where it made it look a little, you know, it's like, is this guy truly going to be that next level? But he has been everything that Steelers hoped he would be, and
Right?
more.
He looked good. I mean, with those attitude issues, that you know, Mike Tomlin's a good coach for that. I don't know what happened with Chase Claypool, why nothing got done there, but if he can rein George Pickens in, then I mean that's gonna make for a really scary wide receiver core. And Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, and then Pat
You also got
Fryermuth.
Calvin Austin the third as well.
Yep.
Yeah, no, like George Pickens, if Tomlin can keep him even keel, level-headed, you guys got a absolute steal of a wideout. I think
Yep.
it was like early 40s you guys picked him in, or was it like
Something like that, yeah. Because
were-
we took him in what, the second round?
yeah, you guys took him
Yeah.
like early to like early mid second round,
Yeah.
and I was a big fan of the guy. I looked at him and I said, if the Bears have the opportunity to draft him, I would not say no. Would I be concerned? Of course, but this is a guy that is very, very talented, and you know what? On the field, he was the best player on the field for that Pittsburgh Seattle game. And I
Yes, he was.
expect I expect to see today who are the Steelers playing today?
Playing the Jags today.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
expect him to also be the best player on the field today. He's going to be one of those guys that I watch. But again, you need to see, obviously he had that highlight week last week. Let's see if he's going to continue to shine, or he's just going to kind of fall back to relevancy, or what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah,
Well, and it makes it easy that we've got so much talent at that wide receiver position as well, because he didn't have to do it all himself. Gunnar Olszewski, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Gunnar, he had a good game as well.
yep,
And he was very much on the outside looking in when they signed him. They signed him as maybe being our punt returner, kick returner,
yeah,
but they had him out there last week, obviously, because they didn't want to be playing Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So he had a good week as well. And that helps guys like George Pickens when the defense can't just key in on one guy,
yes,
and
yes.
helps really ensure that the quarterbacks know how to go through the reads properly. Because if you're just targeting one guy over and over and over, it's, the defense is going to shut you down and you're going to start making some dumb mistakes as a quarterback.
Yep. Which is not something that you want to see happen. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what the team looks like today.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kenny Pickett getting a little bit bigger of a role, playing against probably a little bit more tougher opponents. Let's hope. And so we can truly kind of see where he's at. Obviously, I think he should be probably getting more playing time today.
I
So
think so. I think the plan is probably we'll see Mitch Trubisky on the first series, maybe the first two, and then Kenny Pickett will probably close out the first half,
yeah,
and Mason Rudolph will likely play the entire second half like Kenny Pickett did last week.
yeah, and you guys obviously drafted a quarterback in the seventh round as well. Are you
Yeah.
guys gonna see him at all, or is he basically just like a non-factor at
Not
this
that
point?
no, I don't think they're going to give him much field time. I know he's been around in like the practice squads and playing in that capacity, but I don't. When we've already got three guys that are vying for that starting role, you don't want to spread the ball to a fourth, because you really need to have the ball in those three guys' hands as much as possible. Like they need to figure out this week who's fighting for 1-2 so that
Yep.
they can battle it out next week.
Yeah, for sure. And that's it's a weird problem to have, because
It is.
obviously you want to have your starting quarterback solidified.
Yeah.
And there's the famous statement, if you have two quarterbacks, you really have no quarterback, which is very evident because,
I mean, it is, but it also isn't. I don't have a problem with having two quarterbacks. We've had two quarterbacks for the last several years. It's just Big Ben was the number one guy for sure,
well,
and
I
Mason
mean
Rudolph.
more, yeah.
But I mean, anytime Mason Rudolph had to come in, he was serviceable. He had a winning record. He did the job he was required,
Yep.
and so I don't have a problem with having two guys fighting it out, because it makes the guy who's in that number one spot play better, because he knows that if he doesn't, then the guy behind him is going to take that role.
Yeah. The
Especially in Pittsburgh, a city that is so determined to win every year. You falter in a season like this, and your name isn't Ben Roethlisberger. They're not going to count on you to come back from that and win the season. They're going to
yeah.
just replace you.
Well, again, Steelers fans have been so spoiled the last 18 years because they had a Hall of Famer at the quarterback spot. And,
Yep.
luckily for them, when they've had him go down, they've had consistent enough teams to the point where they can continue to thrive and still put up winning records. Obviously, Mike Tomlin, Hall of Fame head coach, one
Well,
of the best coaches of all time.
now I think is when he actually has to prove that, because
Yes,
there's a
yes.
lot of people and a lot of talk going, well, okay, he inherited Ben Roethlisberger and he's had a Hall of Fame quarterback his whole coaching career.
Hmm.
So now, can he go from that to a guy who's not Hall of Fame ready yet and still have a winning team?
True.
So
Very, very true.
now is when he's really going to prove
He's going to
his
solidify it.
ability
Yep.
to be in that tier of, the Chuck Knowles, the Bill Belichick's, all the greats at
Yep.
that point.
It's kind of like looking at Andy Reid going, the only thing with him is he's never won a Super Bowl, and then when he finally won the Super Bowl, it's like, okay, we have to solidify him as one of the greatest coaches of all time. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
I hear you. I totally agree with you on that aspect. Yeah, no real complaints on that. It's going to be exciting to see what the Steelers can accomplish this week. I'm going to be excited to watch Kenny Pickett get a little bit more action against higher tier opponents.
Yep.
It's unfortunate for Mason Rudolph that he kind of got dropped down the depth chart, but again, you do need to see Kenny Pickett play against tougher competition, even if it is against the twos, because you did draft this guy to be your franchise quarterback for hopefully the next 15 years.
Right. And
So,
I don't think it's entirely unfortunate for Mason Rudolph, because Rudolph's got to look at it in terms of, okay, Kenny Pickett had the whole second half, and look what he did last week.
yep.
So if I have an entire half of football that I can play this week against the number threes, I wonder if I can go out there and put up 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, which could definitely help boost
You know,
his
that's
stock.
exactly it. Like, if nothing else, it'll boost his confidence, has potential to boost his stock, and make it more of a competition between him and Fitzpatrick. It'll or Trubisky, sorry. Um, it'll really push him into that talk of, you guys drafted me a few years ago to be the replacement for Ben. I
Yep.
want to be that replacement.
Yep. And it's not like he was like a seventh round pick. Like he was a
Mm-mm.
third round pick, and we've seen third round picks develop and be productive quarterbacks. Like look for instance,
Yeah.
Russell Wilson. Like this dude was drafted in the third round, and he turned out to be a franchise type guy. Obviously, that's
Well,
a
and
big blunder for
he was
other
brought
teams.
in at the time when Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger was having some injury issues, and they anticipated he was going to retire within the next year or two,
Yeah,
and that was
he
why
was
they
getting
brought
close.
Rudolph in. And then the O line just got better, and then all of a sudden Roethlisberger's not getting hit a record number of times every season, and he didn't have the injury woes as much, and he
Yep.
felt good and was like, oh well, you know what, shit, if Tom Brady's 44 and still playing, maybe I
I
can
can
play a
play
couple
till
more
30,
years.
36, 37. Yeah.
Right. And so that's what ended up happening. And it just, Mason Rudolph ended up in the position that Jordan Love is in right now.
Yeah. Poor Jordan Love. Again,
Right.
I didn't think Jordan Love was ever a first round quarterback. I said with Jordan Love that year's particular draft, this dude, if he can reach his ceiling, which he has to do a very, very, very big climb, he could be a Patrick Mahomes level player. I don't think he'll get to that same level as Patrick Mahomes, but he can be Patrick Mahomes esque.
Yeah. Similar to
Obviously,
how you were describing like Christian Ritter in this year's draft.
yeah, again,
Serviceable, but has a very high ceiling.
yeah, but he hasn't looked amazing. Obviously, I think he's in his third year. Like you feel bad for Jordan Love because he was drafted to obviously sit behind Rodgers, and Rodgers basically gets pissy with this whole situation. Is like, I don't want to retire or be moved on from Green Bay, and this offseason obviously signs a big contract with Green Bay for extending his career. You just kind of got to look at the Green Bay ownership and go like yeah, we know you wanted to do the Brett Favre Aaron Rodgers situation with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, But again, you struck lightning. You caught lightning in a bottle once.
Yeah.
Which is a rarity. You think you're going to be able to do it again? Just because you have the recipe on how you did it last time does not mean it's going to, instantly work this time. And
I don't know if you saw any of Aaron Rodgers this week, but he
was
the
not happy.
the departure of Devontae Adams seems to be hitting him a little bit finally.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
he's starting to realize, oh fuck, I have nobody to throw the ball to.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been really happy reading that
I thought
because
you might be.
all offseason, what everyone's been talking about is the Chicago Bears have the worst receiving group in the NFL, and it's like, why is no one talking about the Green Bay Packers?
Right?
Like, our number one wide receiver is lightning years or is light years ahead of their number one air quotes wide receiver. And yes, they drafted a wide receiver in the second round who looks like he has some talent, and the Bears drafted a guy in the third round. But it's you just kind of look at the situation and go, Alan Lazard is their number one receiver heading into the year. Who would you rather have, Alan Lazard or Darnell Mooney as your number one? I'm taking Mooney 10 times out of 10. You can't convince me.
No, and I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah,
You know,
and
I think the only people that would put Lazard ahead of it are the Aaron Rodgers fanboys.
well,
Because they're like, oh
the
well, it's
Green
Aaron
Bay
Rodgers
Packers.
throwing him
Yeah.
the ball, so he'll be better.
Yeah, it's a lot different when, the best wide receiver in the NFL does not. It decides he's like, yeah, I'm good. I'll go play with my best friend instead
Yeah,
of Aaron Rodgers. The prima donna. Not LSD, DMT.
yeah. He has no best friends to come and play with him. He's got Randall Cobb, but how old is Randall Cobb now?
33.
Right?
Exactly. It's just not like he does not have a good wide receiver group. And the biggest thing with Christian Watson, obviously coming from a Div 2 school in North Dakota State, which is essentially the Alabama of Div 2, but it's still Div 2. It's
Yep.
not to say that Div 2 players can't be successful in the NFL. That's just completely not true. We see them be successful in the NFL, but it's it's a different it's
Well,
different.
well, yeah. Like we talk about how Div 1 to the NFL is such a big leap for players to make to get to that NFL speed. Div 2 is a drop below, obviously.
Yep.
You know, and so those guys have so much farther to climb to reach that NFL ready status.
Yeah.
You know, unless they're these guys that are setting every record imaginable in Div 2.
Yes. It's not very often that you go out and see a Div 2 player come into the NFL and immediately shine and just become like lights out type of player.
Yeah.
Again, it's not unheard of, but it's not very often that you see that situation pop up and arise. But yeah, it's like one of the comments that I heard from Rogers is he's like, if you constantly have a lot of drops, if a guy below you is making those catches, well, guess what? That guy's going to be ahead of you. And, you could just see the level of frustration in his face. And for me, I'm sitting back going like, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I just hope.
Well, exactly. You can only run the ball so many
Yeah.
times at his old age.
Very, very true. The back-to-back MVP, maybe might not have such a great year. And that's what I'm hoping for. Again, I still think the Packers are probably going to run away with the division because it's Aaron Rodgers. It's fucking Aaron Rodgers. I cannot. The dude is he's just proven year in, year out that he's just too good, just too talented. And I just need him to stop. And
Well,
hopefully
and
this
that's
is the
just
year.
it. Eventually, you would think he's got to fall off. You know,
Yeah.
and
Hope.
this would be the year for it when he doesn't have that de facto star guy to be getting the ball to. You know,
Yes.
like we've said that about Tom Brady in the past, where at some point he's got to stop being so good, but he's always had that guy.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was back with New England, he always had Bill Belichick making sure that there were guys for him to throw it to. And then going to Tampa Bay, he's had at the very least, Mike Evans, and a couple other big name guys in Tampa to throw the ball to.
Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, he even
Yes.
had Antonio Brown there with them.
Yep.
He
He
had
had
Gronk.
Gronk.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's just it. Tom Brady just didn't have that fall off of the players around him. and that's
Well,
why
he
we
did
haven't
in his
seen
last
him.
couple years of New England, and that's kind of one of the reasons why he decided to leave. Is
Yeah.
because he's like, you're not giving me any talent to work with. I'm just gonna leave and go to Tampa Bay, have a lot of fun, and
Right. And it
you
feels
know,
like that's what Green Bay was trying to do with Aaron Rodgers. It's just like, yeah, we can't get you anybody good. Maybe you should go somewhere else. And
and
then he
then they
kept,
offered him like 150 million over the next 3 years.
right. Well, because you don't want to let a guy like Rodgers walk. You want to trade him if you can, get something back for him.
Well, and you would have to imagine, like, even with the way Aaron Rodgers is right now, like you're just looking at the, like, at the beginning of the offseason, like when Russell Wilson got traded, you could look at teams, for instance, like a Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh very easily could have been like, hey, Green Bay, we'll give you a first for this year, the 20th overall pick, and then we'll give you like Christian Watson, or not Christian Watson, Chase Claypool, and then they
Yeah.
still could have drafted George Pickens and all that kind of stuff. And
Well, and I know that was talked about a lot last year. Was, there was a lot of rumors around, is Aaron Rodgers going to come to Pittsburgh to finish out his career with Ben Roethlisberger retiring?
yeah,
And you heard me the whole time going, no, I don't want him.
yep,
He's too expensive. Like
too
that. That's just
expensive
it.
and too much of a me, me,
Yeah.
me, me type of guy.
Yeah. Which
No,
wouldn't work.
I hear you, I do.
Though, I
And
mean, who's to say? Like, what would you think if Green Bay struggles enough at the start of the year? Do you think Aaron Rodgers could end up on the trade block a little bit?
uh,
And what if, say, a team like San Francisco and Trey Lance also has the same struggles to start the season, and they go, hey, why don't we throw a couple picks in Jimmy Garoppolo Green Bay's way and see if we can get Aaron Rodgers out here?
yeah, maybe, but you just listen to everything that San Francisco has been talking about with Trey Lance. They have been full on. This is Trey Lance. We are Trey Lance all the way. Jimmy Garoppolo
Oh,
is essentially not going to be a part. But no, I hear, if I think they're gonna struggle through the struggles if Trey Lance struggles throughout the opening part of this year, because again, technically it is his rookie year. Tech, did he play a few times last season? Very
true.
sparingly, but
When I say struggle, though, I mean, like, imagine them going 0-5 or 0-6.
yeah, no, I
You
hear
know, with an organization like the 49ers, that sort of shit doesn't fly.
you.
And so at
No,
that point, I could see them maybe making a knee-jerk reaction and looking around the league, seeing what else is out there. If
that's
they
quite
don't
the
just go
knee
back to
jerk
Jimmy
react.
Garoppolo, of
Yeah,
course.
that is quite the knee jerk reaction though, to go like, all right, well, this Trey Lance, because she gave up 3 first-round picks to go up and select
Yeah.
Trey Lance. To me,
And
that
yeah, don't get me wrong. He's looked good. I don't think that's going to happen. This is purely speculation of me trying to find a way to make you happy and get Aaron Rodgers out of your division. That's all it is.
I appreciate. I think if Aaron Rodgers, if the Green Bay Packers truly are bad this year, I think Aaron Rodgers will continue to play out the year, and he will look at them and say, either you get me like big time talent at the trade deadline, like you trade for someone wide receiver wise, or he just retires at the end of the year. He just looks at it and goes, you know what, like, clearly the team, by the time we get to where we need to be, I won't be playing anymore anyways. So
Yeah.
it could be a situation of he just looks at the team going like, they're 3 years away from actually truly being able to legitimately compete. So I'm just going to say, throw my hands up, call it a retirement, and go, you know what, I won 4 MVP awards and he has a Super Bowl ring. It's not like he hasn't won the Super Bowl. And he's made a stupid amount of money throughout his career. So, it's not like he's walking out like, oh, Aaron Rodgers never did anything. Like, he's been the pinnacle. He's been at the top of the top. So if he has a bad year, I wouldn't just rule him out of just simply call him retirement.
Yeah.
Which, I would look at him and be like, you know what, sir, you're a hell of a quarterback, but thank God you fucking gone. Same way that I was with Brett Favre. It was like, thank
Yeah.
God you are out of here. Then played with the Jets. Then he was brought back with the Vikings. I was like, I just got rid of you, asshole. Like, you really coming back? And then obviously I had to worry about Rodgers. And so, yeah, it's been a
I,
fun time for Bears fans.
Right? I think he's got too much pride to go out on a losing note like that, though. I think if it goes bad enough in Green Bay this year, he's going to go, okay, either you guys trade me or you release me so I can go somewhere else because I want to play on a team that's going to win before I retire.
True, very true.
Otherwise, like he's handcuffing them with how much money he makes as well.
Yeah. It's a very, very weird situation for the Packers. And it's one that's going to be really fun and interesting to watch develop over the season because, funny enough, the Packers' defense is actually more the strength this year than the offense is, which is weird to say because the Packers have never had a bad defense, but they've never had like a really good defense either. They've always kind of been like either in that 20 to like 13 range. They've never really had a top 10 defense. You wouldn't say they're necessarily out of the top 15 any given year,
Yeah.
but I'm not saying like the Packers have a top 10 defense this year, but like it's very interesting to see. But moving forward to I kind of want to talk about this, the Seattle Seahawks and Chicago Bears game that happened on Thursday night. Obviously, we're going to talk about the actual game itself, but the big thing that I want to talk about is the Thursday night crew of Steve Lev, Dan Orlovsky, and Louis Riddick. Holy hell. It was very, very challenging to listen to those guys actually call a game. Like, I've always said about Louis Riddick, I like what he has to say. Like, I feel like he's a very consistent type of guy. Um, and he was definitely one of the better part of that crew beforehand. I forget who they had as their third last year, but adding Dan Orlovsky was just a horrendous mistake because I've never liked Dan Orlovsky for what he's had to say. Uh, you know, and I always throw my hands up and go, you know what? If someone actually played in the league, they definitely have a better opinion as someone who hasn't played in the league and just a couple of guys sitting on their couch, chit chatting away with it. But Orlovsky always has some of the most ridiculous takes, ridiculous opinions on stuff, and you just look at him going like, first off, dude, you were one of the worst quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. Like you have one of the most famous blunders in a football game in existence of where, you see I forget who the Jared Allen rushing at you and you decide to run out of the back of the end zone. Like he was that guy. He was that
Yeah.
guy in
Oh,
that
I know.
0-16 Lion season. Like we all need to remember Dan Orlovsky was the quarterback leading the 0-16 Detroit Lions, who ultimately ended up drafting Matthew Stafford first overall that year. Like the crew was just so bad. They just seemed so unprepared. At one point in the game, they said Charles Leno Jr. was on the field for the Bears. Now Bears fans know who Charles Leno Jr. is. He was their starting left tackle for about 8 years. He hasn't played for the team in 2 years. And you're just sitting and the you'd be like, "Oh, well, you know what? Mistakes happen." The Bears were on fucking defense. They weren't even on offense. You're just sitting back going like, how can you be that unprepared? As someone who is in the sports media world, who has done play-by-play, who has worked for companies and has been taught a lot of these things, the biggest thing that I have learned is you don't necessarily need to be the best play-by-play guy or the best color guy, but you have to be prepared and knowledgeable. And again, blunders happen. It's live, mistakes happen, you can forgive people about that. You listen to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. Do they make mistakes? Yeah, without a doubt. But these guys sound so unprepared. The like again, I'm just gonna read a bunch of tweets from people who were watching this game and commented. ESPN announcers dogged the Bears their whole drive despite driving down and getting 3 points. Praised the Seahawks for a 3-and-out. Like the Seahawks had 4 3-and-outs in a row, and they're like, "Oh, the Seattle Seahawks team, their offense is really good. Like they just need to have a little bit of this, this, this." And the Bears are constantly moving the ball, doing really well. It's like, oh, this team is horrible. This is the worst roster ever. Another one is watching the Bears Seahawks game on ESPN, and somehow the ESPN has crammed three of the worst NFL announcers in one booth. Sure, Louis Riddick is probably the worst of the three, but damn, it is way too close for a competition. Like, if you're playing a drinking game, every time announcers say Russell Wilson, you're probably passed out on the floor by now. Thursday night announcers spend 10 minutes flying over the Seahawks with Nari and kind of word for the Bears, but the Bears are winning 10-0 with 2 minutes left in the half. Question mark. All right, so literally no one is happy Dan Orlovsky is in the broadcast booth tonight. Yep. Announcers after Seattle turns it over. The Bears have life. Meanwhile, they're up 17. This Monday night booth, like, you're just sitting back going like, thank God these guys are not the actual guys moving forward. And again,
Right? That would just kill Thursday night football.
what this is also the Monday night backup crew, because now
Oh
we
God.
have Troy Aikman and Joe Buck moving over to Monday night, but like
Yeah.
these are the backup crew for Monday in case something happens to like Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, where the crew just can't go that week, and you're sitting back going like, thank God. And for someone like me, I can actually speak on this with level of expertise. It's because this is what I do for a living. Like, this is what I'm training to be, is in the broadcast booth. And I can sit back and go like, these guys clearly did not do their homework. Like, you're listening to them talk, and you're just sitting back going like, what the fuck? It
Right.
was just like, as someone who is in the broadcasting world, I sit back and I just go like, that was an embarrassment for my industry. Eh, so utterly frustrating. Ugh.
Maybe Dan Orlovsky's just trying to make people forget about that horrible play he made running
Well,
through the back of the end zone. He's like, if I blunder enough in the announce booth, then I'll be known as the guy who can't announce instead of the guy who runs away from the defensive end through the back of the end zone.
well, funny enough, the final play of the second half, the Bears are punting the ball, and Seattle fumbles it into their own end zone. The Bears pick it up and score. They get a touchdown. And this isn't the last play of the half. There was like 30 seconds left in the second half, or the first half. And of course, the announcers go, well, this was a big special teams blunder. Like, you can't be doing this in your own end zone. Funny enough, in our broadcast booth, we have someone who has also had a blunder in their own end zone. And, Dan Orlovsky tries to, like, play it off. He's like, oh, I don't need to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, no, no, no. Like, dude, like, Mark Sanchez has accepted the butt fumble. He has.
Yep.
You can't be sitting here telling me, like, you can't accept this situation. Like, it pissed me off. And
Yeah, it's funny because I watched a little bit of that game, but I didn't have the sound on, so I didn't hear any of the horrible announcing.
yeah, well, for me, obviously, I'm at work. I wasn't able to watch it. Threw in one of my headphones and was listening to the game. And of course, when you just have to listen to it the entire time, you're just like, I'm just sitting there like foaming at the mouth, going like, just getting angrier and angrier listening to these guys. Obviously, big news for the Bears, Roquan Smith situation. The entire time these guys are like, oh, the will linebacker is not an important part of the NFL defense. It's like, in Chicago's defense, the will linebacker is probably one of the most important parts of it, because you look at what, Matt Eberflus, our new head coach, did in Indianapolis. Who was Indianapolis's best defensive player? Darius Leonard. What position did he play? Played the will linebacker spot. And how good was he for that team? And if you take Darius Leonard out of Indianapolis, does that defense look as good? No. And the entire time, this crew was just like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it sucks to not have Roquan Smith in there, but it's not too big of an issue. It's like, what?
Right? Like,
The
that just makes no sense. And granted, this early in the preseason, Roquan Smith probably wouldn't have been playing anyway.
Yeah.
But but it's still a big issue for the Bears that they need to get sorted out before the regular season begins.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Dan Orlovsky is he said the Chicago Bears have the worst quarterback situation in the league right now. I'm just sitting back here going like, all right, the two quarterbacks that are going to be on this roster come the start of the year. Our starting quarterback going to be Justin Fields. He's
Yep.
in his second year. He has a lot of talent, and you're hoping he takes that next step. Our backup quarterback is Trevor Siemian, a guy who has had a lot of starting experience. Is he a guy that you necessarily want to be playing an entire season? No, but if he needs to come in for a game, you're not necessarily too worried because he has that experience, he has that pro readiness, you know what you're getting out of him. To me,
Right?
that is not the worst quarterback situation. I look, for instance, at Seattle.
Yeah, the team they were playing against.
Yeah, where they have Geno Smith beating out Drew Lock for the starting quarterback spot. Again, yeah, Geno Smith, 10-year pro. But again, that's like saying Trevor Siemian is, leading the Chicago Bears in the race. It's not true, but you're just sitting back going like, yeah, it's fine to have a 10-year vet, but if he's not good, you look at the Commanders for fuck's sakes. Like they have a worse quarterback situation. Like you
Right?
to say
I
that
would take the Bears quarterback situation over the Panthers.
yeah,
The Falcons. There's many teams out there.
honestly, personally, and this is just me saying this, I'd take the Bears quarterback situation over the Steelers.
Yeah.
Because right now, again, you have Mitchell Trubisky, who again I've had to watch for 4 years. I know what he's capable of. Again, was that Matt Nagy, taking him down a peg? We don't know. We don't know. We'll see.
We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out. We don't truly know what Kenny Pickett's gonna be at this next level. We don't.
Exactly.
And
Whereas with Justin Fields, we know what he is capable of and what he's going to be.
yeah, we just need to see him take that next step.
Yep.
Like again, you and I, we sat down and watched the Bears and Steelers game last year, and we both looked and went like, okay, who was the best player on that field that night?
Yep. Justin Fields.
After Fields took that hit, it was like, all right, gentlemen, I know you guys got the defensive player of the year right now, but I'm going to make you guys look like a bunch of high schoolers. And if the Bears defense decided to actually play that night, the Bears would have easily won that game.
Yep.
It just get. I don't want to hear that crew again. It was just so bad. Yep. But moving forward on to the actual game side of things, for the Bears last week they faced off against the Kansas City Chiefs. You didn't really get to see a whole lot out of the Bears starting offense. They didn't score any points. Fields made some really nice throws, and then it was just kind of backup and that kind of stuff. Obviously, the Bears, their running back room is insane. Obviously, once we get David Montgomery back, he's going to be the bell cow. But then you also have Tristan Ebner, who is going to be phenomenal, a kid that we drafted from Baylor in the 6th round. And then we have Khalil Herbert, who we drafted in the 6th round last year, who was phenomenal when he got in playing time. I'm really excited about that. Obviously, Velus Jones, we saw a lot of work from him this week. From the special teams standpoint, the dude looks scary. He looks scary, scary, scary. And you just got to get him a little bit more comfortable with running routes in the NFL. And I think he's gonna, like I said, I think he's a dark horse to be the offensive rookie of the year this year. He was actually my pick to be the offensive rookie of the year this year. So we will see. I'm really excited to see how he's gonna do. Obviously, I think the Bears defense is playing exactly the way Eberflus wants. I'm excited to see them. I'm just ready to get to the regular season. I'm just genuinely waiting, just want to get to the regular season because this is when we're truly going to see what our teams look like.
Well, and I mean, for you, the biggest question mark going in was that offensive line. Has there been really a more definition happening there where guys are really solidifying their spots?
Well, obviously, I know Cody Whitehair is going to be penciled in as our starting left guard. He's been our he's been our most consistent starter over the last couple years. We have the kid that we drafted, Braxton Jones, in the 5th round out of Southern Utah this year. He's our starting left tackle right now, and you know what? In his first week, he didn't look bad. And this week, he also looked fairly good. He got more playing time. You know, the starting Bears offensive line this week gave up 0 pressures, all of them. Not a single pressure was allowed from our starting offensive line. And it's not like Seattle doesn't have some decent edge rushers. Like Boye Mafe ran havoc against your Pittsburgh Steelers a week ago. Like he was a dominating presence on that defensive line for Seattle. You know, he's very quick edge rusher. Bears defense held their own, or Bears offensive line held their own. We moved Tevin Jenkins, who was obviously there was a bunch of talk about him throughout, preseason. Uh, he initially started as our second line right tackle or second string right tackle. Now we're moving him to our starting right guard, which I think he's going to do really well at. This was his first game as a right guard. He performed really, really well. So I think the offensive line is slowly but surely, making its way into some relevancy. But it's just going to be kind of building week by week. It's going to be better than last year. Obviously, the Bears giving up the most sacks in the regular season last year. There's nowhere to go but up. And
Yep.
I think they are going to be going up. Do I think they're going to be a top 5 offensive line, top 10? No. Do I think they're going to be improved? Yeah. I don't think they're going to be a bottom 5 offensive line this year. Obviously, you still need some bigger and better pieces, but yeah, that's my thought on the offensive line. It's slowly coming together. Is it as fast as I would have hoped? No, but am I happy with what I'm seeing from it? Yes. Yes, I am.
Good.
Yeah. So moving forward to past some of our teams that we've definitely talked about. Some news regarding Deshaun Watson came out with this week. Uh, he has agreed to take an 11-game suspension and a $5 million fine, and a bunch of money from both the NFL and the Cleveland Browns are going to sexual assault awareness and prevention causes.
Yep.
But Deshaun Watson is still coming out and saying he has done nothing wrong. He claims his innocence. This whole situation with Watson, again, when we talked about the 6-game suspension that he initially got, we're like, that's not enough. Like that, that's kind of embarrassing and a joke that this happened. But just from what Deshaun Watson has been saying, he's been flip flopping so much, and it's just like, can you just please pick a side?
Yeah.
At the beginning, he's like, none of this is true, blah blah blah. This is all false. Then he comes out and he's like, you know what? Like, I want to say sorry to all the victims that have been affected by this situation. Then he's like, I'm innocent. I've still done nothing wrong. Well, if you've done nothing wrong, and you know you've done nothing wrong, why are you accepting a suspension? Why are you accepting a $5 million fine? If you've done nothing wrong, fight the hell out of it. Tom Brady, we talked about this before in the
Mhm.
Deflategate, he fought that like hell. Did he win? No. But it eventually came out, it's like, you know what? Tom Brady didn't actually do anything in this situation. So, but Tom Brady knew he didn't do anything wrong and he fought it like hell.
Yeah.
And we've just kind of seen Deshaun Watson not really doing anything about it. And to me, I just look back on it's like you're saying you're apologizing to all the victims, and in his, you know, on I think it was like Wednesday we found out about this news. He tweeted something with written comments. He's like, "I'd like to apologize to all the victims, blah blah blah, for the situation." And then he does his live press conference. He's like, "Oh no, I'm completely innocent." Like it's like, within a day, like you're completely counteracting your statement. Like you can't apologize to victims. Like it's like me looking at it like I apologize to all the victims of drunk driving, but I've never drunk drive. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
To apologize for something that you've never been a part of. If I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson is innocent by any means. I'm always player first. I'm going to side with the player until proven otherwise. But in this instance, it's too hard to not ignore the evidence that is being brought towards him. I just constantly look at this guy and I just go like, it's a tough one for me. It's a tough one.
It is tough, yeah, and I mean, I'm glad they tacked more games onto the suspension. I feel like that $5 million is still a little lackluster considering he's got a guaranteed $200+ million contract.
Yeah, 220
So,
something.
like dropping the hat, like maybe make it 25 instead of 5, like something,
Well,
and put that money towards the awareness and everything that they're planning on doing. And I did see that it also he is not allowed to get any sort of physiotherapist, massage therapist, or anything like that without it being
a Browns
approved by the Browns and the NFL and
Yep.
then documented by them as well. And
Yep.
so what that tells me is it's probably going to have to be in a room with a camera so that if he does anything, they've got him dead to rights at that point.
Yeah, and for also one thing that I've also heard from the situation is it's only going to be like a Brown certified physician as well doing it.
Yeah.
Which is probably a smart thing, but
It's going to be more costly for the Browns as well because during that 11-week suspension, he can't utilize the same trainer that is going to be taking part in the team activities because he cannot have contact with anybody on the team.
Yes.
So they have to hire a completely separate physiotherapist trainer to work with him.
Yep. And, knock on wood, hope to God that, nothing bad comes out of that. But yeah, the fact that Deshaun Watson continues to claim his innocence, if the NFL and both the Cleveland Browns are going to give a bunch of money, I think it's like $7 million total to, sexual assault, prevention. It's like if they're both doing that, what like and Deshaun, like you're just like it just seems counteractive. Everything that he's saying and all the moves that are being made, he's getting counseling for fuck's sakes for something like this. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go get counseling for drunk driving if I don't have an issue of drinking and driving.
No, but I'm sure a part of it was he agreed to it just so he could shorten that suspension and get on the field this year.
Very very well possible. But again, going back, I know I've said this before. Going back to even when I was an athlete, why do you need 26? Why do you need 60 different massage therapists? Like
Yeah.
I have one doctor. I've been with the same doctor for years. Most people only have one doctor. I get that. For me, I have a physiotherapist. I have only ever used one physiotherapist.
Well, and it's obvious with him that it was every time he would make an advance or something like that, he'd be rejected and have to move on to a different therapist because he made it bloody awkward.
Yeah, which is just
Whether or not he actually physically assaulted any of them or it was just verbal, that's what we don't know.
Yep. Well, a lot of the comments is that like he'd be making derogatory comments towards them, he would be making advances towards them, he would refuse to,
Mm-hmm.
wear proper towels and that kind of stuff. Again, the only way we know what truly happened in those rooms is if it was documented and filmed. And again,
Yeah.
most times most people don't want to be documented, even the massage therapists don't want to be filmed in that regard. And it's really really shitty, but like it it just
Well, yeah, I'm hoping that the truth finally comes out about what happened and everything gets resolved. I'm kind of glad that we don't have to be talking about Deshaun Watson now for the next 13 weeks or so.
yeah, we won't see him again till like December 13th.
Yeah, week 13, I believe.
Yep. Yep. And maybe by that point the Browns have been so bad it doesn't even matter relevancy wise of what they do, even with Deshaun Watson back under the helm of their quarterback. But yeah,
Maybe, who knows? Either way, he'll be coming back just in time to go up against T.J. Watt in week 18. So
well, you're hoping at that point that your team is good enough they don't even have to play their starters come week 18.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, I
You're
think we're going to
thinking
be
with
fighting for a
reality
wild
here.
card spot, and so it's hard to say that for a wild card spot you're sitting your starters in week
Oh,
18.
the only time you're sitting your starters is if you have a playoff spot solidified and
Yeah,
you can't really improve your playoff spot, and you can't improve or you're not going to be demoted in your playoff spot type situation.
exactly.
And at that point, it yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really see my Steelers finishing first overall in the AFC. So I don't even really see us finishing first in the AFC North unless Joe Burrow goes down with an injury.
You still got to be worried about the Ravens because they're still a consistent.
Not really, no.
You gotta love that Raven hate.
They don't worry me, man. Like even if Lamar Jackson's playing there, like he has not been able to get it done against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for
You know,
fair.
like yeah, he's great against all the other teams in the league. Fine, but against Pittsburgh and TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick, he has not been able to get it done.
Yep. Yep.
And so it really does. They really don't concern me. Not like they did when Joe Flacco was playing for the Ravens. Yes, that concerned me because he had that game-changing ability against Pittsburgh. Or when they had that defense of Terrell Suggs or Ray Lewis, guys like that, the defense was good enough that they could just shut us down.
Yep.
Now the Ravens don't have that against Pittsburgh. They started building their team to compete with Cincinnati as opposed to with us, and it shows because they have not swept us in a season series, and they have to struggle just to split that series with us most seasons right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you for sure. That's gonna be. I feel like that's gonna be one of the more interesting divisions because obviously, you know, the Ravens are still a good team. Yes, they struggle against the Steelers,
Yep.
but the Steelers are also going to struggle this year. Like what we've said before, we both feel like the Bengals are going to run away with that division.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but looking forward to the regular season, has there been anyone on the Steelers team that initially you didn't think maybe might not make the roster is showing that they are good enough to make the roster and be a contributor?
Well, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Gunnar at the wide receiver position, Gunnar Schlefsky, or however you pronounce it.
Yep.
He had a great week last week. We've been hearing good things about him all through training camp and preseason at this point. And he had a big hill to climb. We had a huge wide receiver room, with big name guys like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, drafting Calvin Austin and George Pickens. Like, it was an uphill battle for him for
Yes.
sure. Like, we brought him in maybe thinking he was going to be a kick return, punt returner, and now he's making a case for himself to possibly be that fourth or fifth wide receiver.
Yep.
And so that's an interesting one for me for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, when I look at the Bears, we brought in a kid, Jack Sanborn, from Wisconsin, undrafted free agent linebacker. We've just been hearing nothing but just lights out performances throughout training camp, and we're like, this kid looks really, really good. We're really hoping that we can get more. But once we saw him against the Chiefs, led the team in tackles, got an interception, got a tackle for loss. Dude looked really, really good. And this week, did he have necessarily that same level of week? No, but he still looked good. And I think he's going to work his way up to that second line linebacker, for our team. And if Smith does not continue to play, I might give him an opportunity at the starting will linebacker spot just to kind of see what he can do for this team. Again, young guy in the Matt Eberflus defense is going to be. He's a 3-year starter from Wisconsin, so it's not like he hasn't played for a big time program, and he was rather effective. he was considered to be like a fifth round prospect, but ended up going undrafted and decided to sign with his hometown Chicago Bears, which is another thing that you like to see, a guy, coming back and homegrown talent. I'm excited to see what this kid can do moving forward. He's without a doubt solidified a roster spot. I would be shocked as all hell if the Bears cut him. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to see what we can do continuing with this kid moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean that's like my guys. I'm looking forward to tonight's game and see if we can finally get some separation in these quarterbacks. Get a clearer picture of who is going to be our 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Assuming they even want to keep all three. I
True.
still have my doubts that if Mason Rudolph doesn't get that position, whether he'd actually want to stay with the organization or not.
Yeah, no, definitely an interesting thought for that, for sure. Um, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what continues to happen with that quarterback battle. It's going to be interesting to see what Trubisky does again.
Yeah.
If he stays consistent from what we saw last week, or does he fall back down to earth? Going to be really excited to see Kenny Pickett play in a lot more action today against better talent.
Yep.
But one tweet that I want to go off of is Antonio Brown has some speculation on what Tom Brady has been doing these last 10 days, and he speculates that Tom Brady has secretly not been going to practice because he's appearing on The Masked Singer, which I thought was, you know, that's something that popped up. Again, Antonio Brown he's literally just CT walking, but
Yeah.
he makes some of the most ridiculous comments and statements to the point you're just kind of like cock your head like, what?
Sounds
But
more like Antonio Brown tried out for the Masked Singer, and they were like, "Yeah, no, we don't want anybody as
he was
crazy
on
as
The Masked
you
Singer.
on here."
I
Was
think
he?
he was on like the first season, like him and Terry Bradshaw was also on it as well. And he's saying, he's like, oh, the reason Brady's not in Tampa Bay right now is because he's on The Masked Singer, blah blah blah. It's like, who cares? It's Tom
Well, and that's
Brady.
just it. Even if that's the case, who cares?
Yeah, you
You
think
know?
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sitting back going like, ah, yes, we're really, really worried that we don't have Tom Brady for 10 days of preseason. The
Well,
dude
and
could
if you think
literally,
for a second he was going to take a single snap in preseason, you're crazy anyway.
well, he might have taken a few snaps, but it was like maybe one series where he hands the ball off to Leonard Fournette. And he's like, here you go, buddy, do all the work. But yeah, again, this is Tom Brady we're talking about. Like, the dude doesn't have to play in the preseason, he doesn't
No,
even need to be there.
no,
Like,
no, and it's not just him. There's lots of guys you don't see. Like that was both our Bears and Steelers. Like there were lots of guys last week that didn't even put the pads on.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, that's because you are the number one guy. We have faith that you're week one ready. Like, no, why would we put you out there and run the risk of, Tom Brady, he goes to hand the ball off to Leonard Fournette and rolls his ankle. Oh, now we're without him for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Well,
all it takes. Like, why would you even risk it? It's not worth it. And so for him,
exactly.
like, even Tampa Bay, I'd be like, well, I'd much rather him be on the Masked Singer for this 10-day hiatus than like out on a fishing boat in the ocean where he could fall overboard.
And drowned, yeah.
Right? Like, that's the safest possible place he could be, is on a show where there's like no actual danger.
right, right. Like, I'd rather have Tom Brady on a stage, fake singing. I don't know what happens on The Masked Singer. I've never watched it, but I'd rather have him there doing that as opposed to like, spear fishing in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Like exactly what you're saying, and
Right?
it's one of those things. I would rather have my starters be out for the entire preseason and have them struggle a little bit week 1 and 2, just trying to get back to use of the
Yeah.
game speed, as opposed to, for instance, watching like a star player, for instance, like Darnell Mooney, knock on fucking wood that he doesn't get hurt, go out for an entire season. I,
Yeah.
I'd
Because he's
rather
going
him.
up against a third, fourth string guy who maybe isn't the best at tackling properly and just hits him the wrong way.
Well, yeah, even then, like a second string guy potentially, it's just like he goes up,
Yep.
makes a catch, guy hits him a little bit he's trying to make a play because he wants to either become a starter or solidify his spot on the roster. We see it
Yep.
every single year. And people are like, well, you need to get your starters in there. I would rather go 0-2 and watch the team struggle for the first couple of weeks, and then see the team be really consistent throughout the rest of the year and be healthy, as opposed
Yeah.
to being like, oh, my starters are going to get in there for 10 plays, and then on the third play of the game, a star goes down.
Yeah.
You never
Especially
like
now
seeing
having
that.
an extra regular season game every year,
Yeah,
more than willing for that. And if you're not in a position battle, then there's no reason to have you out there.
exactly. Like, the Bears know Justin Fields is the starting quarterback moving forward. I don't
Hmm.
expect them to even see him dress in week 3. I would be very shocked at that.
Yeah. Well, that's like me too. Like I fully expect next week Pittsburgh to probably start the game with Kenny Pickett, then go to Mason Rudolph and have Trubisky close the game out. Sort of the same rotation they've done last week and this week. Just shuffle those three guys through those three positions
I
is
honestly
what I
wouldn't even
fully
expect
expect.
Trubisky to play next week.
If I think it depends on how well Pickett and Rudolph play today. If they both play lights out again today and have super high quarterback ratings and multiple touchdowns or anything like that and like no errors, then at that point they got to go, okay, well, you know, these guys are showing that they're just as good as you, Trubisky. You still have more to prove.
Yeah, without a
You
doubt.
know,
Yeah.
that's the only tough thing. Like just because he's not strides ahead of them already. If this week happens and Trubisky goes out there and throws his great passer rating, no interceptions, does well, and the other guys each throw an interception, then guaranteed you don't see Trubisky next week.
Yeah.
But if we see a similar stat line this week to what we did last week, then I think we'll see all three again next week.
I would still say Trubisky's probably going to open up the game next
Yeah.
week if you do see him. Just because, again, why would you put your air quotes starting quarterback against the threes just because you want to see Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph? I feel like you'd put Trubisky in there for a series or two for week 3 and then just kind of move down the line. To me, again, it sounds like Pittsburgh is truly looking at Trubisky going like, you are the starter for this year until proven otherwise. And then it's really just like Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph fighting for that number 2 spot. And clearly, Pickett won the battle last week. And
Yep.
now it's going to be who's going to win it this week. And I think you're going to see Trubisky, and then whoever wins it this week goes number 2.
Fair. Yeah, because I think they'll want to get Pickett sometime against the ones next week. That's the only reason I think that Pickett would start the game next week.
Yep, and if that's the case, if Pickett does end up starting the game next week, I would expect Trubisky not even to dress, and then you'd see Pickett, Rudolph, and then that 7th round quarterback that you
Olajuwon.
drafted. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
just
that's very
because
possible.
again, you did draft him, yeah, and if he's gonna remain with your team, you might as well see him in some preseason action. I think you're
True.
probably gonna get to see him tonight.
That is possible. Yeah, I hadn't heard anything this week, so I don't know if they're dressing four quarterbacks or not.
Yeah, it'll be definitely very interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to continue to watch to see what's happening within the preseason today. Obviously, we had a couple of games yesterday. There's
Yeah.
a few games going on right now that we haven't really touched on, but yeah, I think that's all we have really communicated today. Again, preseason, it's definitely a little bit light to talk on news-wise. No big injuries that have happened that are, stand out or like
Mhm.
wow, like this guy went down.
Which is
Um,
good.
yep, we
Definitely happy to
definitely
hear that.
like to
But
see
yeah,
that.
I feel much like you. I'm ready for the regular season at this point. Like there's still a couple position battles on my team, but nothing that I'm super concerned with at this
Yeah,
at this moment. It's yeah, it's cut week. Let's get these games over with. Let's cut the roster down a little bit further and see what we've got going into week 3, and then make those final cuts and let's get some regular season football.
exactly. To me,
Yeah,
I'm ready to get back into some regular season football. I've obviously for me, I've already seen 2 games. So for me, I've kind of been like, the third, fuck, whatever. I know the players that are realistically going to be the 53-man roster and some of
yeah,
the practice squad guys. Like I already know who those guys are going to be because obviously I've been able to see 2 games already. For you, obviously, this is kind of like the last week you really care about. And then it's week 3. It's just like, and I'm ready for football.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I want to thank everyone for sitting back with us watching. Again, football going more and more each week. We're excited about it, but we will see everyone next Saturday.